The serendipity lifestyle is basically how I define how I got here. It's realizing who you are and living from that purpose in everything that you do. So I think we tend to have a lot of different compartments and boxes for our lives, and we try to put everything in this place that it goes into and separate out who we are. That's how I ended up falling in love again. It's how I wrote my books. So for me, the serendipity lifestyle is just being your fullest self. My name is Jessica Bird. I'm 24 years old and I am a writer. I live with cystic fibrosis and I've survived child abuse and trauma and sexual assault. And I have my own business right now teaching and inspiring artists to live more fulfilling lives. I was diagnosed with cystic fibrosis when I was about 3 months old. So cystic fibrosis is a disease of the pancreas that affects mostly your lungs and your digestion. It basically causes all the mucus linings in your whole body to be extra thick and sticky, which means that if I get sick, I hold on to it a lot longer. And as I get older, my organs won't be able to function because they're having to work a lot harder already. I think the average lifespan for someone with cystic fibrosis was around 45. So ultimately, I ended up creating my business because I couldn't work a normal job. And something that I learned as I built a business is that you can make it as hard or as easy as you want to. So part of why I keep going with it and part of why I keep writing and why sharing it is so important to me is because I know there are other people with this disease who don't realize that's an option. When I was a kid, I spent a lot of time literally in closets, like in dark rooms. My mom was an alcoholic and a drug addict, and I remember when I was in those spaces feeling so alone and so scared, what kind of kept me going was this memory of going to the ocean with my grandpa. I was 11 years old when I saw the ocean for the first time, and I just thought about it every single day. Like every day I would cry and I missed it and I wanted to go there. I just decided I can go see the ocean, I'm gonna do it. So I made it happen. And it took me about a year before I realized if I really wanted to be here, I needed to just radically change my life. I had to decide that I had the power to change things instead of waiting for someone else to give it to me. And that's when I started my business. I think living with cystic fibrosis has been honestly kind of a gift because I've learned to live as if I would die tomorrow. I never knew how long I was going to live. In high school, I went through this phase where I literally thought my life was halfway over, and it could have been. I was told at that point that my life expectancy was 30 years at most, and I was 15 and learning like earth science. And I was like, this is what I'm doing with my one and only life. I remember feeling so frustrated and angry, and I didn't want to take my meds because the meds have side effects too. And to me, if I was only going to live this short life, I wanted a quality 30 years, not being miserable with side effects. So it taught me early on to make decisions for myself, and it taught me to also consider quality over quantity way before I think most people do. I think a lot of people my age today, they're very focused on materialism and on having like the most beautiful thing and the best thing. And I still get caught in that trap too. But it's a lot easier for me to stop myself and be like, wait, what really matters? Because I don't know if I have 2 years. I don't know if I have 10 years. I don't know if I'm gonna live to be 80 something. But every second really matters to me. I'd read a lot of books around life coaching because I really had always been looking for that deeper purpose, that deeper meaning, and just trying to make my life better. I was always looking for what my parents couldn't teach me because they didn't have the knowledge themselves. So when my life was crumbling down, that's when I finally was like, okay, maybe I can do something with all of this that I've been learning. Maybe I can do something with this person that I've been becoming. Maybe it means something. I think it's actually always really easy for me to write, especially to write vulnerably. Sometimes the hard part is just, especially when I first got started, if people didn't respond. When I first started my blog, I actually did it right out of a miscarriage in college, which I think is pretty uncommon, at least to talk about. So I was 19 years old, I was newly married, I'd been 12 weeks along, so I had the playpen set up, I was teaching my cat to stay out of it, I'd made room for this whole human in my life, something most 19-year-olds don't do, and then it was just gone. And I didn't have the family support to lean on, and I was in a new place, and my friends didn't understand. And every blog I looked up, everything that I looked for online, it just told me, like, it was women who were in their 30s and 40s fighting with infertility. And I was 19, and I just felt so alone. And so I started this blog there, sharing about my miscarriage and the healing from it. And I remember feeling so scared to be that vulnerable, and nobody even saw it. After a couple years of blogging, and even just a couple months, I started getting responses on those really vulnerable posts. And I'd kept blogging because I thought it was fun. I thought maybe it could be a business for me someday. So I had some posts that were more fluffy. They were kind of exciting things you can do for holidays, recipes. But it was the more meaningful ones, the vulnerable ones, that always hit home. And I would get thank you notes from my readers. And now I don't think a week goes by that I don't get a thank you for that first blog post I wrote about miscarriage, about my struggle through it. Most men with cystic fibrosis are infertile, so they can't have kids. But for the women, it's a little harder because of all the linings in our body being thicker. It makes it harder to actually get pregnant. I haven't had that problem. I've actually had at least 10 miscarriages. But for me, I think before I even got to the miscarriages, there was a lot of planning and a lot of thought that went into having kids and if I had the right to have kids. And ultimately what helped me feel like I could still have kids, I still wanted to have kids, was realizing that the CF ended up being a gift for me. It's the reason that I value the life that I have so much. And for me, I just think I don't want to not be born just because I could have had CF. Every miscarriage was just a punch in the gut and then some. It was awful. It felt like the world was ending and like it was conspiring against me. I remember feeling so sorry for myself and then feeling ashamed of myself for feeling sorry for myself. Like I should be glad I'm even here. I should be glad I could get pregnant. And this was part of where my whole concept for Embrace Yourself came from, was realizing all those experiences I went through were perfectly valid. I was 19 and 20 and a lot of my friends didn't get it and I felt very alone. But as I've gotten older and I've looked back on it and I've gotten to know more people and shared vulnerably and in return been shared with, I'm learning that everybody has these thoughts and everybody has these feelings. So finally I let go of feeling like I have to make this happen. I have to cause my children to come into the world, and instead I just let it be. And that was kind of the beginning of the serendipity lifestyle of just trusting, letting it flow. I got dogs instead of kids. They worked out, they were great. I've published 2 books. The first one was called Embrace Yourself, and I published it right when I started my life coaching in 2018. And that one is all about just realizing that every feeling, every dream, every fear that you have is valid. And embracing it where it is. I think you find the freedom to be yourself once you accept who you already are. And I think a lot of people get stuck on that. Like we want to be to the next place, but you cannot get that until you stop resisting what's already true. There's so much freedom in just accepting the truth. Writing Raped Not Ruined, it was a lot harder. One night I got invited to go and hang out with a friend from high school. And I did, and it was so much fun. We made smoothies, we watched Netflix, and I spilled her smoothie all over her. Typical me moment. And so she went and she's taking a shower. I got it in her hair, and while she's in the shower, her roommate that I didn't even know she had came home. And I was just sitting on the couch watching TV, didn't even acknowledge him. And he just hopped over the back of the couch and he attacked me. And that's how I was raped. And my friend, she heard in the shower and she called the cops. And what really was the most shocking for me in the moment was just his face. Like after he was done, he sat down like nothing had happened. And he just had this like glossy, motionless expression. Like he wasn't even a person. And I think I've seen a lot of people do a lot of cruel things in my life. I've had abusive step-parents. My mom's been beaten. I've seen children be abused. I've been abused myself. But in those moments, I could always see the person underneath the action. I could see the hurt that was causing them to do it. And when I was raped, I couldn't find that. You'd never want people to feel sorry for you, especially growing up through the childhood I had and through chronic illness. When I was raped, I was like, this is one more thing people can pity me for, and I don't want that. So I came here to the coast by myself, and I was up at 4:30 every morning writing this book for the first 2 months that I was here. I wrote it for other survivors, but I also wrote it for their families, and I wrote it for people who have raped, for people who have committed that crime against others, and for the people who love them. Because I think when we have this conversation, we kind of leave that out. Like we say, if you've raped someone, you're evil. And it puts this hard stop on the conversation. It puts a hard stop on any room for healing. So Raped Not Ruined was another even harder look, I think, at embracing the truth and being able to bring out the humanity in every situation. And so after I was raped, once I started kind of coming to terms with what had happened, I was angry and I was scared. And then I was angry because I was scared. And I had to teach myself to actually talk about what I'd gone through because I didn't want to hate people. I really wanted to forgive him. And being raped and realizing what that was doing to me, holding that anger, actually helped me overcome a lot of the abuse I went through as a kid. Because then I saw that when I held on to that fear and I didn't take care of my own healing, I was being more of what I didn't want to see in the world instead of being what I did want to see. I realized I didn't cause what happened to me. I didn't ask for it. I wasn't responsible, but I was responsible for the healing. And when I learned that, it rippled through every area of my life. And that's why I share the story the way that I do. That's why I wrote the book and went so into detail about what happened and shared even the anger and the shame and even the parts that I thought weren't necessarily loving. I shared that because I want the people who are going through it to know that it's okay, that you can feel angry, that you can have that hatred, and you can still find a human part of yourself and come back. I think we don't share because we don't want to be judged, but at the end of the day, the things that we're not sharing are what's keeping us divided. We all have these big, pretty boxes around ourselves, and we forget that we are all human beings. And if we just shared what we're afraid of, and if we just shared what we're afraid of being judged for, that disarms the judgment. But I also think that the other side of this conversation needs to be acknowledged. If I had the opportunity, I wouldn't just want to give advice to the person who'd been assaulted. I'd want to give advice to the person who did it. Because I've learned, like humans, we want forgiveness for the things we've done wrong. And it is really, really, really dangerous to become the kind of person that you feel is unforgivable. Because then you don't feel human anymore. And you have no reason to continue living like a human and taking care of people. So I think when we have this conversation, it's important to realize all around we all just need to acknowledge our own humanity. I don't want to see him, but I would love to know that he's out there doing better things. I would love to know that the person who raped me found peace. When I look at how far I've come and I try to think about where I'm going with it, I think what's next for me is just proving to myself that I can keep doing this. It's really not only living the serendipity lifestyle, but getting really comfortable in it and finding my own grounded peace. I feel like I've gone from this point of like a little cocoon into a butterfly, and like I'm flying now, and it's just learning what I can do now. For so much of my life, I thought my purpose was to heal, and now I'm learning that healing is great, healing is important, but there is so much more, and I don't even know what all more there is. So I think my job now, my purpose now is just to keep following the inspiration, keep living in serendipity, and see what happens.